As coaches, a common question we ask our clients is, where do you feel this exercise? And honestly, half the time the answer is nowhere close. For example, someone's doing an RDL and she says, I feel it in my lower back.
And too many women are afraid to start lifting because they worry that their form isn't correct. So today, we're giving you the exact cues that we give all of our clients so that you can get the most out of your training because feeling in the right places is where the magic and intention lives. Welcome back to the Overthinking Podcast, the show for women navigating health and fitness in a world that makes it way more complicated than it needs to be. We're your hosts. I'm Bri.
And I'm Kelsie. And if you're here, chances are you're tired of overthinking every fitness trend that demands us to shrink and has us feeling like we're failing at a system that never wanted to see us win.
This podcast is your safe space for honest conversations and evidence based guidance so you can stop spiraling and finally live the healthy and full life you know you deserve.
Today's topic comes from the conversations us coaches have over and over with our clients to ensure they get the most out of their training and stop feeling confused about what really moves the needle for body composition.
And this has been kind of a brainchild of mine because I've been restructuring my one on one coaching offerings and I've been kind of polling and talking to my 4, 5, 6+ year clients about like what they love from my coaching, what they like learning from me, because we want to bring that onto the podcast. And so it kept coming back over and over again. They wanted to learn, make sure they were doing the correct form, know the intention of each exercise and like how to adjust it and like where to really feel it. And then the last piece is like how to just maximize the movement for their individual goals, whether it was body recomposition or athletic performance, or even just like feeling a little bit more connected to a body that society has told us to silence and feel disconnected from. So,
Or get a fat dumpy, because that's our first exercise, which we're going to give you all the cues for a hip thrust and make sure you're really getting those juicy glutes.
and full transparency, I was born into a family of what we call long backs. And that is where your back just doesn't stop at the hips. It just keeps going the same. It doesn't protrude out. Okay. We have no butts in our family. And so hip thrusting twice a week for myself. And a lot of my clients are women who want to grow juicy, athletic, powerful booties. So we're going to go through at least a couple of these. And I'm curious for the people listening to this podcast, as we go through these talking points, I'm curious which cues you have heard before and like which ones you haven't. Because honestly, the clients that get the most out of their training are the ones who like record little notes for themselves, like in their training, so that when they come back to it and try to progressively overload, they kind of know what to look for.
So, one of the cues that I love to give for hip thrusts is because I think a lot of times women will either, there's two ends of the spectrum. Well, they'll either go way too light because they're not sure, right? And then you're doing like the 50-pound pre weighted barbell and you're struggling to get it on your lap, but you can't really like do it well. And then you're just like kind of doing these partial rep ranges. Or the other end of the spectrum is women are going too heavy because they're just kind of like muscling through it, which really short changes that lockout position. So when I'm trying to get someone to lock out, I tell them, think you're like a dog tucks its tail. Like you want to have a neutral pelvis most of the time. But if you just want that last little squeeze, you want to like tilt your pelvis or tuck your tailbone like you're a dog.
I love that cue because similar to that, so if you were a client of mine, the way that I would explain that same exact thing is to thrust your pubic bone into the bar. Also, one thing you said before, like setup totally does matter. And this is one of those exercises where it's great to have a coach at least like 1 or 2 times, or like your fittest friend, your lifter friend come with you and just teach you the setup and kind of the ropes. But like thrust you, so instead of like kind of like letting your back arch all the way, I kind of like keep the spine neutral, but I do think about, like you said, like tucking the pelvis, kind of like thrusting the tailbone into the bar versus just trying to get more range of motion. Because when you
Right.
think about that thrust position, you're actually squeezing more out of the glutes. If you're just trying to arch and get more range of motion, you're probably dumping into your low back a little bit.
Right, and if you're someone that feels maybe your quads in your hip thrust, it might be the fact that you're not fully getting that hip extension at the very top. You're not getting that pelvic tilt or the squeeze and contraction of your glutes. So if you're someone that's like, I only feel hip thrust in my quads when I go heavier, maybe we need to slow down tempo and really focus on what that lockout is.
Yes, and when you if you feel it more in your quads, you can actually play with bringing your feet out a little bit. If your feet are too far behind you, then you're stretching the quad more than really what you can get out of your glutes. So
Right.
if you're feeling it too much in your hamstrings and not enough in your glutes, your feet are probably too far out and you need to bring them back in. So these little nuances you can learn, like that was like one of the first things I started loving about training was learning like, oh, if I change my hand or my foot position this way, I'll feel it in a different position. And then you kind of feel like you're in control of sculpting your body versus just like, is it big or is it small?
Right, right, and it's not like changing the muscle that you're using, right? It's
No.
you're just biasing what area or what, like, part of the muscle is getting the most engagement. Another thing that I think about when we're thinking about hip thrusts is when you're going down, when you're lowering your hips down, like, towards your ankles, a lot of
Mhm.
people will let their knees kinda collapse in. So
Oh,
I will say, like, drive your knees apart, and I know we'll get to a cue about, like, what your feet should be doing, but we'll save that for, like, the squat and RDL. But when you're going down in your hip thrust, when you're lowering your hips, you should also be driving your knees out. And then on the way up, you're keeping your knees in line with your feet and then getting that contraction at the top.
yes, absolutely. Why this why hip thrust matters, if you're like a guy, right? If you're a guy and they're like, I don't need a hip thrust, I can like deadlift. It's like, well, the reason why hip thrust is a must for both aesthetics and function is
Did
that
you just
the
say
glute
aesthetics?
ass aesthetics and
That's
function
amazing.
is it is the largest and most powerful muscle in your body, right? So under biasing or under activating that specific muscle means your low back and your hamstrings compensate and you just don't have as much drive. And that is why when anyone who gets like a back injury or like wants to get powerful for a sport, I will load people up pretty heavy with hip thrusts. It's one of those movements where you can lift a lot more than you think you can, like you said. And so, especially if you're kind of like, I don't know, nervous to start lifting, all the way up to if you're like a elite athlete, this is a great movement to have in. And I think like 8 to 12 reps, about 10 to 20 sets per week. That's a pretty good sweet spot if you really want your glutes to grow.
My favorite strategy for, like you're saying, going heavy on hip thrust, but also getting that like really juicy engagement is I'll do two kind of primer, what I call aesthetic sets. Excuse me,
Mm.
aesthetic sets. So what I've been doing is you do a set of 15 reps, and every fifth rep, you pause for 5 seconds at that really juicy contraction. So they
Mm.
still should be pretty heavy. You're not using just the bar. Like you should be getting to that 15th rep, and you're like, holy fucking shit, I want to like fall over. So
Yes.
two of those, every
Yeah.
fifth rep is a 5 second pause. You really get that like full muscle belly that's like, you turn around and you're like, holy shit, like, did I just get a BBL in 5 seconds? And then follow that with two heavy sets for, it could be a range. We could say 4 to 6. So you're also getting that like strength rep range where you're going, of course, heavier than those sets of 15 because that's a lot of time under tension. But those sets of 6 are way less time under tension, meaning you can have more intensity.
Yeah. Let's I kind of feel like we could do a rapid fire of our like favorite ways to absolutely kill our glutes. Um, so I have been playing with 1 1/4 hip
Oh, yeah.
thrust.
Love
So and
those.
we and Kelsey and I are talking a lot about the top of the hip thrust, but a lot of these movements that we'll talk about, we really emphasize the eccentric a lot because that's where obviously the lengthening happens. It's where we can put a lot of tension on the muscle. But for hip thrust specifically, when we emphasize the top, it's emphasizing where you can get the most squeeze and actually my muscle connection. So I'll do like, 6 to 10, 1 1/4 hip thrusts, rest 20 seconds, like a myo set, and then just do as many regular hip thrusts as I can with like a 2 second pause at the top. And that pump feeling, like, that's what you were doing before your sets, is like a pre-fatigue or like a pump set, right? Where you just pump as much blood as you can into the muscle. This is great for actually not necessarily newbie lifters, but kind of like intermediate because it helps you, um, like when I'm really rushed for time, I won't do like a huge warm up. I'll just do like a pump set or two. And I'm like, okay, I'm priming the tissues that I need. And then maybe I'm supersetting my main muscle group with like something else for to warm up for the next thing. Kelsie and I chose one movement from each of the five kind of primary core movement patterns. And so we just talked about hip thrust, which we're going to consider a hinge here. We'll get into some other hinging variations as well, but the next one is going to be a squat or or a knee flexion movement.
And if you're trying to have a well rounded physique, including your glutes, it doesn't just stop at hip thrusts. So, our next exercise is actually going to be a rear foot elevated split squat. I love a rear foot elevated split squat. And to be honest, it took me about 10 years to get to this affliction for this exercise. Like, I started like everybody else, where I was like, fuck Bulgarian split squats. That's hell. I hate them. They're so hard. And it really took a lot of just like, you know what? I'm going to do this until I like it. And now it's one of my favorite exercises, especially for training the glutes, because that we need that unilateral strength to make us stronger in squats and hip thrusts, in just like as a well-rounded athlete. They transfer directly to other things like running, hiking, stair climbing, getting up off the floor, climbing up on your counter if you need something on the top shelf. All of this unilateral leg strength is functional strength in a way that like maybe just doing a back squat may not get you.
Right. There's also a lot of balance and coordination and speed. Well, and true power work, depending on how you train it, right? And the other thing I love about a rear foot elevated split squat, not just because it is one of the most important movements for athletes to do, is there's so much variation to it. You can be more upright, which will bias more of the quad, be more hinged forward, bias more of the glute and the hamstring. You can actually rotate into the front of your leg and get even more groin and adductor, which we don't get a lot of. You can actually get more abduction from rotating as well. And so, one thing that stays the same for me as a coach, and I'm not super dogmatic about a lot of things, but I love training this one movement cue for split squats, which if you've done Bulgarians or rear foot elevated, the balance part is a little bit challenging, but it's meant to be that way. So if you're a new client of mine, I will train you to put 80% or more of your pressure of your weight in that front foot so that your back leg on the bench is literally just a kickstand. Like if someone were to like kind of push you over, you'd be able to stay stable. This is for balance. This is for coordination. And it's also for core control because the way your core and your hip flexor connect as an athlete is one of the most important things keeping you injury free.
Yeah. And to your note about doing like so many different variations of leaning forward, staying tall, there's also so many variations of like equipment you could use. You can use
Yes.
a dumbbell in one hand, you can use a dumbbell in both hands, you can have a wall, like a shelf support. I actually like to start people on a shelf supported, like having one hand on a shelf or a bar, something to stabilize you, and a dumbbell in the other hand. I like having the hand support because we can actually train the system heavy. We can kind of push it a little bit quicker, as opposed to if you're always trying to work on balance and you're trying to stabilize, like, yes, that's great. That's the next evolution of where I want us to be. But I've had my 70-year-old clients both start with a hand support because they do kind of lack some of that balance. I get them strong on that single leg, and then we move to where they're fully balancing with two dumbbells in their hand. And furthermore, you can use a belt squat, you can use a barbell, you can use a safety bar squat. There's so many ways to do one movement pattern.
Yes, I love that because a lot of people who are afraid to like look silly in the gym or look stupid is like, "Ugh," it's like there's a million ways to do every single movement. So you could look like the most advanced lifter in there and you're doing something no one's seen before, but just don't be embarrassed. So I love that you touched on, there's a lot of different variations and ways we can do it. Again, that's why it's important to have a coach because your individual goals, whether you're playing a field sport or you just want to live long and prosper, like you may bias one position more than another. Also, if you're more prone to injury or have been dealing with an injury, anyone with back pain like myself, that's why I'm standing today because
Like
I
both of
really
us.
hurt my back. And like Kelsey's had a pretty bad history of back pain too. So we are here to tell you, brace your core. Okay. So wherever your belly button is, the 2 inches below that belly button, that is where you want to like imagine that someone's going to wind up and punch you as hard as you can. This is going to do two things. One, it's going to protect your spine. But two, it's actually probably going to shorten your range of motion, but for good reason. If you let your core relax and you get to the very bottom of your split squat, your pelvis is twisting and now compensating, trying to get more range of motion. So, more range of motion isn't always better. Let your body determine exactly how much range of motion you're supposed to have, literally just by bracing your core. And you will actually notice this like little spring out of the bottom too when you really brace it.
I want to say one thing, which is a common mistake or a common error I see people making with split squats, rear foot specifically, is the back foot being way too high. Like a lot of the benches at gyms, if you're like
Yes.
under 5'5", those are going to be way too tall for you for the most part. So what I would do in that situation is if your gym has a Smith machine or a barbell, like put that bar pretty low, like maybe three quarters
Like
of the way
for
up your shin.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Like it should not be as tall as your knee. It should be about three quarters of the way up your shin. And that's
And I
probably the height that you want.
I'm 5'9", and like a normal rogue bench is like a little high for me. Like it's
Yeah.
maybe just fine, you
Yeah.
know? And also if you are someone with back pain as well, a higher surface doesn't mean better. Like it actually might mean worse for you because you're trying to like overextend or hyperextend to try to get that range of motion. Um, you can stack a couple plates also. Like I've done that before, stack a couple
Yep.
plates, low block. Okay.
So this next one actually is not one exercise. It can be applied to any bilateral lower body movement like a squat, an RDL, a sumo deadlift, a standard conventional deadlift, anything where your feet are driving through the earth. What I want you to do, so let's, for example, just use an RDL, Romanian deadlift. I want you to pretend like your feet are eagle claws and you're going to like spread your toes like you're an eagle, like you're going to grab something, right? I want you to put your feet on the floor, spread your toes, grab the floor with your toes, and I want you to rip the earth apart. And if you're standing, you probably might feel your glutes start to turn on. I'm sitting in my chair right now and I'm grabbing the floor and I can feel my glutes are like activated.
Yes, my like knees instantly bent into like a power position.
Totally, same. And if you're in that position, so you should be maintaining that with your feet and spreading the entire time. And if you have a lot of reps, it's okay to reset that. But for the most part, you should be keeping that constant the entire set. And then, so if this is an RDL, what you're doing is keeping your chin tucked and neutral. I want you to reach your hips back with your tailbone. So, a lot of an error people make in a Romanian deadlift is they try to reach down. And that's why you feel it in your lower back, is because you're letting your lower back do the movement. So, if you're using these eagle claw cues, you're spreading the floor. I want you to reach your tailbone back away from you. The dumbbells stay on your shins. And then as you come, you're going to keep a neutral pelvis. And then as you come up, yep, Bri's going to demo for us, reaching back with your butt. Yep. So it's more of a horizontal movement than it is vertically. So if Bri was just going to go vertically up, down, you might see her lower back start to round because she's just focusing on moving the dumbbells down. If she's sitting back with her tailbone, yeah, nice. So she's reaching as far back as she can until she feels like she's going to fall over. That's where she stops and comes up, squeezing the glutes.
And you've seen people a lot of times with RDLs, they're like, should I bend my knees or should I not bend my knees? There's a million variations. If there's one thing you learn, that's what you learned today. And if you are trying to bias a little bit more of your glutes, then yes, you might want to do a little bend in the knees, but only after you've reached that peak hamstring tension. Like
Yeah.
you literally can't stretch your hamstrings anymore. Then you drop the glutes a little bit and get into the or drop your butt and get into the knee bend. One thing about RDLs as well. So I like to think about the corkscrew, like you were saying, the claws. I like that. Sometimes when I feel like I don't have my whole foot on the ground, like cyclist squats, or if I'm doing like a leg press machine, and I don't feel safe to like do my whole foot, I'll just think about my heels. I'll drive my heels down a little bit more, my heels and my big toe, and I'll think about kind of swiveling my heels away from each other, and that
Hmm.
helps. So, like, everything's equal pressure against the side, but you're just slightly driving out with the heels to create a little bit of that torque in your glutes.
Mm, I see.
So not like just enough, and similar to like when you were if you were to do a bench press, like I would tell my clients, like pretend like you're bringing your hands together so you can get more of that like chest activation and just more like torque within the joint. Um, but sometimes when I'm like leg pressing, I like don't want to do too much of this like outward thing, but I want a little bit of that juiciness. So I'll just kind of think about the heels, and then thinking about the big toes more of like stabilizing me.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're someone who struggles with maybe getting low in your squats or you always have that knee cave in where your knees knock together, try this foot cue out and see if you're able to get lower or if you feel your glutes better.
Yes, love it. So we've really covered the lower body. We've really done it. So if you can take those 3 movements and, repeat them with our cues, you're gonna have athletic, strong, and probably pretty toned legs pretty
You're going to
quickly.
be pretty aesthetic.
Athletic and aesthetic. Okay, so now let's move on to the upper body. And we did our wedding dress guest episode, wedding arms episode. So let's just touch on kind of like the heavy hitter. When you want that like X frame in your outfit, like you want like a broad shoulder and a nice skinny, like thin waist, like that kind of aesthetic, lateral raises are one of the number one things that we will do to build the shoulders. And it actually kind of blew my mind when I first was taught these because I really thought I could lift a lot of weight when I was doing these. I was like, yeah, here we go. 15s, first time ever. And I then learned that that's not how you do it. So the biggest cue is one to slow it down. So thinking about pulling my shoulders back and down first and like maintaining that as the foundation of the movement. So nothing about that back and down changes at any point in the movement. Then your only thing you're thinking about is reaching your arms away from your body. Like if my hand was going to go as far away from my arm socket as possible, that's what I'm thinking about. So keeping my shoulders back and down, and then reaching my arms away from the armpits as far as I can. And then that loading position, that top position is going to be really hard. It's going to be hard on your shoulder. So if you can just kind of hover there for a second and ride it on the way down, you can feel the actual stretch of your delt, and that is the whole point.
Right. Yeah. And I have a little bit of a different approach for myself only because I have a shoulder that does not like a lot of things. I've dislocated it many a times and never in the gym, interestingly. Um, so what I like to do for lateral raises, I actually lean forward. So I don't do the retraction of my shoulder blades. I'm actually
Mm.
leaning a little bit forward. So I will lean forward and I'm still reaching long, like you said. Like you said, reach out as far as you can. IQ, reach long. Like you're trying to like get the longest wingspan that you possibly can.
Cool. Love that cue. That's great. Lateral raises has a bunch of different variations too. Like when I worked out with you and Seth over Christmas, we were doing some pinkies out lateral raise to get kind of like that, that little indent, if you can see on YouTube right now, like the little indent here, like that's the pinkies out, man. You got to get pinkies out, elbows up. And then we
Pinkies
did,
out.
you can do like a front raise, a Y raise, a lateral raise, rear delt raise. Like your shoulders are a globe. They are 360. They are ball and socket joint. So just like your glutes, you have to train them in different directions. You got to train your shoulders in different directions. If you can't just do shoulder press all the time.
And I'll say for lateral raises, you're probably going to spend a long time not PRing on lateral raise just
Yeah.
because of the nature of the exercise. The farther away from the midline, the harder something is going to be. So if you have been stuck with the fives, with the eights on lateral raise, that's okay. But I would encourage you to, spend a long cycle with doing tempo, super intentional, but don't be afraid to like do a set and really push it. Like do the 10s, do the 15s, just try it. If you can only get 3, great. Then do a little back off or do a drop set where you try the 15 for 3 and then you back off to 10 for 3 and then you back off to 5 for 3. So you can still accumulate that volume, but you're trying to drive the adaptation using that heavier weight.
I love that. I just actually posted something on my Instagram about lateral raises and it's got 76,000 views.
I saw that.
what the hell is going on? But honestly, it just goes to show you that knowing the right cues and knowing what to think about, and then knowing exactly how much do I have to do to make these shoulders grow? Tell me how many sets I got to do. It's just nice. It's nice to be like, okay, I can check that box and I know I'm on the right path. Where so many of us women might spend hours and hours going to fitness classes being like, I don't know how many sets I did, and this is a really easy way to be like, all right, I know I'm on the right track. So let's move into upper body number 2 and our last movement.
And our last movement is going to be pull ups for all the baddies who can or want to do pull ups. This is one of the things that I try to encourage a lot of my female clients to make a goal because being able to do something body weight is so indicative of your strength, right? Like if you've ever tried to do a pull up in your adult years, you're like, this is so hard. You're essentially lifting your body weight. That's how strong you have to be. So pull-ups are one of the things that humbles everyone and intimidates most people from even trying. So there's ways that you can modify it, right? Like the assisted pull-up machine is fine. I don't love it. I would rather do like a banded pull-up or getting really strong in the basics first, like lat pull down, single arm row, getting your back really strong, and then trying to do a pull up program. But one of the cues that I like to do for pull ups, whether you're doing them banded or unassisted, is thinking about bringing the bar to you. So instead of like you're pulling yourself up to the bar, think about bending the bar and pulling the bar to you.
I love that. I can literally feel it in like my mid and lower traps. The thing that's so tough about pull-ups is like as women, we are anatomically disadvantaged, okay? We've been going like this. Most of us have been going like this for a lot of years, rounded shoulders. So when we're trying to like train pull-ups, we're like, I'm not strong here. It's like, yeah, because we haven't pulled your shoulders back in 25 years. So I think the thing that's really important to note here is that what Kelsey's talking about is like that mid to like that mid back needs to be super engaged. And the muscles, like your lats, are such a big sheath of muscle. They literally attach at your shoulder and then attach again at your like back of your hip. That is a massive sheath of muscle. So if you can engage your mind to like that big muscle, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to pull your scaps down and you're going to feel a lot more control in like that change in direction. Another thing why pull-ups are so great is because of grip. And if you're following all the longevity trends that are out there, then everyone's talking about grip. And the reality is that it really does matter because it's one of the 2 places that we test for bone density, your wrist and your hip. And so if you can keep your grip strength up, it's going to keep you from like there's some statistic about like increasing all-cause mortality by 30% after you like hurt or fracture a wrist. Don't quote me on that statistic, but it's something like the moment you like hurt your wrist or you hurt your hip, it's like, well, like your risk of dying is like exponentially higher.
Basically,
Um,
you're saying if you want to train for your old lady body, start doing things that require your grip. Deadlifts, pull ups, bent over rows. Do these things very heavy if you don't want to break your bones early in your life.
and then I have clients play with a variety of different pull up grips because I do want your grip and your shoulders to be able to engage and stabilize in different ranges of motion. When we lose overhead stability and control, everything kind of changes. So I will typically have the supinated grip, so your palms facing your face. That's like the quote unquote easiest for a lot of my female clients. And then we go to neutral, so your palms are facing each other, and then pronated, and then wide grip actually tends to be really hard for female clients just because of that ability to like pull in the lats. Like we just don't have a lot of that mind muscle connection. And a lot of women, especially older than us, didn't grow up lifting weights. So like feeling your muscles is a very weird thing. So
I will
being
also say, as someone who's dislocated my shoulder, I mean, women tend to be more flexible. We're a little bit hypermobile, which is why we tend to have more like dislocations. As someone who has dislocated my shoulder, wide grip pull ups are not on my menu. Those are off limits for me. But I will crank out neutral grip and supinated chin ups all day long.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that wide grip is something that Kelsey will never ever play with. Like wide grip lat pull downs at like higher volume, lower load, higher mind muscle connection, or higher tempo is like a
Exactly.
great place for that if you've had shoulder injuries before.
Yeah.
There's a safe entry point for everything. And in terms of pull ups, there's a very like Kelsie and I have taught a lot of people how to get their first pull up.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like everything has progressions. So if you're someone who wants to start doing pull ups, but you don't really know where to start, I would actually start with like an inverted row, either a TRX strap or setting a Smith machine bar low enough or high enough that you can actually be under it and pull yourself up. That's where I would start. Of course, getting really strong in a lat pull down is necessary. You want to mimic the movement pattern that you're going to be doing. And then negatives. So that like doing eccentric chin ups, or negatives is like the lowering portion of the chin up. So you'd be stepping yourself up to the bar where your chin is already at the bar, and then lowering yourself down for a count of say 4 or 5, and then getting that full extension because we want that strong overhead position, and then stepping yourself up again.
I love it. And then one other thing to think about with pull-ups is that they are largely like your pull-up performance does is largely impacted by how your nervous system is recovered or not. So if you're someone who's just starting pull-ups or kind of like getting into the flow of having pull-ups in your program more, don't be defeated if there's like a day where you just don't got it. Like you just don't have any juice. Like those days will come and go. It's not sometimes it's related to your period, sometimes it's not. Like sometimes there's a reason and sometimes there isn't. But if you're someone who's like excited to do pull-ups, put them on the day of training that you typically feel your best. And if you have a coach or you're following a program for that, for anything that you want to, you can't change what you don't track. So anything that you want to have as a goal, make sure that you're making notes along the way so that you can make those connections. And that's part of the reason of kind of you stepping into your own kind of coach's shoes. And then a lot of the clients I work with now, like they don't really need me anymore, but it's just fun to hop on the phone and talk about why their training's so great for them. And so after, a year or two of having a coach, like you end up being the one that coaches your friends, and you end up being the one in the gym that people ask like, hey, can you teach me like how to use that machine? And I really think that's where confidence lies, and where we can teach somebody else something that really scared us once.
Right. And it's no longer this like othering thing where it's like, oh, only fitness people go to the gym or only trainers go to the gym and work out hard. Like, this is strength training is inclusive if you want it to be. You have to choose this life, and you should choose this life because of all of the benefits we've talked about in almost every episode.
And if you're someone who wants to get strong and needs a little carrot to track, I did I did set up a strength assessment, which you may not have tested all these things before. I don't expect anyone to have tested all these movements, but you probably have tested some of them. So in my Instagram, there's a brilam.com/strength assessment, and you can put in all your results and kind of see where, okay, maybe I'm stronger in pulling, so I should focus more on pushing. So from a performance lens, but also from a structural balance lens. So check that out.
We give these cues to you because there are things that we say to our clients over and over and over. And it's the things that make the exercise and the program really click and really helps these clients actually see results. Because you could download a program from ChatGPT or anywhere online, and you may not like the magic isn't in the program. The magic is in the intention, and it's in knowing exactly what you should be doing and what you're training. So if you're doing an RDL and you're always feeling it in your lower back, but you want to go heavier, then you might need some form cues, and that's okay. That's what we're here for. Use the tools available to you.
And if you took something away from this episode and are excited to try some of these moves, send it to a friend and download it, subscribe. And as always, connect with us on Instagram. That's where we post little clips of the show you can send to your friends at over_thinking podcast, at Brianna Lamb, and at Kelsie Michelle. And you can watch us on YouTube now and on video on Spotify. And we will see you
In
in the next episode.